So we're going to do a live review of Tarot Decoratif. Wow.
Yes, out from US Games in 2021 by Ciro
I love the
Marchetti
back.
with a guidebook by Lee Bursten, who's written a few of Ciro's guidebooks. And Dax, we need to see if we can get Lee Bursten on Tarot Today Radio, because he's writing all these guidebooks. He did the Gay Tarot, he did the Zodiac Tarot, and I like the guy. I like his take on things. I'm like,
Yes.
he would be pretty interesting. And, to make the FTC happy, you should say Tarot Decoratif. The US Games was gracious enough to send you a copy. I bought my own copy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really an interesting deck. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, and book set, of course. He wrote the book, and yes, I mean, his take on, I love the spread at the end of the book. We'll get to all that when we pull the book out. I got to start with just the box. I mean, it's all about presentation. You watch the unboxing of, say, Apple products like a MacBook or something, or iPhone or what have you, on YouTube, and it's all about the presentation. The quality starts with the presentation, and
It's the packaging.
I like the size, shape, and quality of the box, and the fact that it's not a flip box. It's one that actually pulls off like that, and you're right away presented with the book. And it's the whole presentation. Look at even the interior. Wow.
Well,
there's Lee's book right on the top, and it fits perfectly in there, and a little hard to get out. They should put a little nip, so you can pull it out. But there's the book. It's about that thick. And actually, I didn't look at the page count. 166 pages here. And I like his take on things. I like how because it's familiar, yet it's slightly different.
I think it's real different.
One
thing I want to say about the box that I really especially like, for those of us that like to keep crystals in the box with our cards, I always keep a crystal in the box with my deck, is this little insert here that keeps your cards from running around. They didn't glue it down, so you can easily pull it out and throw it away and put crystals and stuff in there. So I love that. I really get annoyed when they glue them in. Like, there's some publishers that'll do that, and that just annoys me. But not US Games. And this is the mass-produced version. There's also an independently produced version that you can get from CiroMarchetti.com.
So when you pull the book out, which fits perfectly here, you're presented with the deck, and then Mary just showed you the cutout, which very well done, very well done. And I like boxes where you can actually put the deck back in, and you don't necessarily have to go out and get your tarot bag. This is by Ciro, by the way, as well. You don't necessarily need a box or a bag, because nowadays, from almost all of the major publishers, we're getting really high quality decks, and boxes. I'm sorry, even some of the because I was thinking of decks like that are self-published. Even some of the self-published ones, the creator has gone out of their way to source amazing boxes, which is not easy to do.
It's getting easier. And it's getting easier because when you look on like makeplayingcards.com, they have like a whole bunch of options, which is really kind of nice.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this is a quality set put out by US Games. And again, the independently produced version is available
Try to get that
with
in frame. So
Ciro
that's
Marchetti.
the spread that I was talking about. And he calls it the power of 10 spread. And it's 10 cards, but what I like about it, it's 2 cards for each position. And it reminds me of your cross that you use on the radio show, only he's doing 2 cards for each position.
Yeah.
Definitely check
A-
that out.
And the thing that is really kind of cool about it too is that you definitely want to read this book by Lee Bursten. It has a really, several page, very in-depth forward written by Ciro on kind of what his inspiration was for this deck. The thing that's kind of interesting is that he said he attended like a conference where somebody was talking. What was the guy's name? Russell Sturgis was giving a presentation on, it's like it was his theory about the Tarot de Marseille and what he saw as a connection with the Cathars, right? Or the Cathars, right? I've heard it pronounced both ways. And not all scholars agree, as we know, on the origin of anything tarot, including the Marseille. But that presentation that the guy gave, like, inspired Ciro to kind of dig into the Marseille when he went to create the Tarot Decoratif. So you see the Marseille titles on the cards. And it's really kind of they're so beautifully done, like, just to show you this is the full card. You can see that. And
Oh,
to
wow.
give you kind of a contrast, you see I have a Marseille deck here. This is Jodorowsky's Marseille with Philippe Camoin. But this is like, I love that he did his own take on it, and it's really, if you compare it to Cam ones, you've got that that kind of like, you see how modern Ciro's take is on it. Yeah, he's still carrying the bag over the thing, and he's got the, if you can see those side by side,
Yeah,
he's got the staff, he's got
I
the
wanted
bag, he's got all
I
of
wanted to
that.
show
Yeah.
that in the book, because when you are reading through the book, he's putting up the original Marseille next to the
Yeah.
Decoratif version, and you can really see the inspiration, how it's there, but it's a modern take on it. It's gorgeous.
It really is. And for people that aren't familiar with the Marseille, yeah, that's what they look like. And he really goes so in depth, in a way that I don't, there's so many deck creators out there that just do what they want to do. And, they have every right to. It's like, okay, here's my version, here's my deck, and maybe they tell you why, or maybe they don't tell you why, but it's almost like he presents an argument for the choices that he made. And I was reading through it, and I'm like, it is so cool to get to know this stuff, because I don't feel like that happens a lot with deck creators, where they really dig into it. Usually it's just like, this is my version of whatever, this is my deck. They try and want to make it just speak for itself.
And then on the minors, how
Mm.
in Marseille, it's just the symbols, but Ciro has added a small image on each
vignette.
So it kind of blends the two traditions together a little bit, which, by the way, makes it a lot easier for someone like me that, is not a Marseille deck reader, to actually enjoy it and be able to use it.
Yeah, these little vignettes from the art, the Rider-Waite-Smith cards, I think is really helpful,
Cornucopia on the
especially,
side.
yeah. And they're just blended in so nicely. Like, I don't know why, you know, how some cards, you know, they stick out to each other, like the Three of Pentacles, just the way he did that. You see the guy working there, but the way
Oh
that
yeah.
smaller image is just blended in, you know, like they're not they're not disruptive. You know what I mean? It's not like you have like just a Marseille style card, which would be, you know, like 3 coins, right? Uh here's an example. And this would be the cam one
There's the Three
deck,
of
but
Cups.
yeah, so that's how they did like the Three of Pentacles in the Marseille, right?
Oh,
So it
okay.
looks like that. And so you compare it, and so you see like the structure, you know, and instead of like the decorative elements around the suit, you know, the symbols, the coins, you know, he's
Yeah.
got this a stained glass window, it looks like, in the background, and he has a vignette, you know, from the Rider-Waite-Smith right there, and it just is so awesome. I think this is
Mary,
wildly creative.
I think this one, the 6, is a
Hmm.
really great example of it, because
Yeah,
you see this, the symbolism from the Waite Smith. We got the scales and the weighing out, and the wealthy individual, whether it's a merchant or a wealthy person, and they have the glove on, and they're, you know, giving out a coin.
yeah.
It's
And
such a
then,
great blending. And by the way,
and
we
this,
should do the backs.
oh,
That's
the
the back.
backs are gorgeous. Yeah,
Just gorgeous.
yeah. This card cracked me up because I don't know if you picked up on this or not. Like, because I know I don't think you said you didn't have any Marseille decks, right? Um,
Right. I don't.
but
I admit it.
I have a few, and so when I saw the Two Pentacles, I got such a kick out of it. And if you look, you know, it's Ciro Marchetti written around the coins with the
Right,
year
right.
2021, right? And I think people might look at that and think like, what, you know? But that's what they do, you know, like here you see the same thing. And on historical
Oh,
decks, you'll see that sometimes on the Ace of Pentacles or even on the Two of Pentacles, you know, you'll see a name and you'll see a date. And so I love that that's that classic, you know, kind of shout out
what was
that he
the date
does.
on that one? Was it 1291?
Well, this
A
one
little
is
blurry.
14. Well, this one, because it was Jodorowsky, and yeah,
Yeah.
on Shiro's is 2021. You know,
Okay.
you can see at the bottom. And then when Jodorowsky and Kim One did theirs, they did theirs in 1997. But if Pierre Philippe Kim One is the heir to like the last Marseille deck printmaker, you know.
Oh,
Um, and so this is his family, you know, tradition or whatever. So he has the year 1471 to 1997 on his. But I don't know, that card made me smile when I saw it, and I'm like, that's awesome, because it's like just another way to continue the tradition, you know. And
right.
I I think it's such a unique deck that kind of, you know, it's like it's in its own lane, you know,
Oh,
and
and
because of those vignettes that he put in the minors and just
you can see how thick it
everything.
is. What about the
Yes.
card stock, Mary?
Well, you know, the cardstock's really interesting because very recently I I purchased my first independently produced Ciro Marchetti deck, right? You know, I couldn't resist the Mystic Palette Tarot, which is actually his latest deck that's out there, and there's not a mass produced version of it available, and it came in 2 different colors. I did a video about that. I was like, oh my gosh, it took me forever to decide which version I wanted. But so I compared the cardstock to that, And plus, another reason that I wanted to mention that deck is, we were talking about the Fool, and the Fool in this one is holding a Marseille card, the Marseille Fool.
Oh, yes.
So it's just really cool. But, so this is the US Games Tarot Decoratif, which I don't know what the independent version of it is like, but I would assume it would be the same quality as the Mystic Palette. These cards are thinner and flexible, and it's actually my favorite kind of cardstock. Ciro's Mystic Palette is a thicker, I think you would call it more substantial cardstock.
More substantial, yes. I like that.
And it's a little bit bigger than, the Tarot Decoratif mass-produced version there. It's a little bit taller, a little bit about the same width, and we're just talking like, fraction of an inch, like maybe that's a quarter inch taller. But yeah, so these are thinner cards. And like I noticed, I think like a lot of people, we read a lot of reviews about decks. And one thing that, for weird reasons, I think it's for weird reasons that cardstock has become such a thing. Because when I see people talk about cardstock, I often think to myself, like, what are they looking for? Because I'm a riffle shuffler and I'm a full-time reader. And so my cards have to, stand up. There's a lot of decks I've gone through, that have been destroyed from doing thousands of readings with them. So I'm looking for good cardstock, like the US Games version of the Tarot Decoratif. I'm looking for flexibility, so I can riffle shuffle them. And, to me, the cardstock with this is good. The cardstock with the Mystic Palette, I think, is more along the lines of what everybody else thinks is good cardstock. It's thicker, and I am still breaking it in because there's not a lot of flexibility after, a couple weeks of like just practicing shuffling with this deck. I'm starting to kind of, but thicker cardstock also makes a deck bigger. And so we think of it in terms of what? There's 78 cards in a deck, right? Now, you held up earlier, this is how thick the deck is, right? Of the Tarot Decoratif compared to how thick the deck is of, if you can see the difference there.
Yeah.
The thicker cards make for a thicker deck. And if you have smaller hands, you're like,
Well, it's also the size, and I wanted to show here. I've got the Grand Lux. Where's Grand Lux? Here's Grand Lux, and then I've got the Decoratif size, and then I also pulled in the Legacy too, because this is like mass produced from what, 12 years ago. This one, 11. You can actually, I don't know if you can see it with the camera, but you can see the wear on these cards because I've used them for so long. But the Decoratif and the Grand Lux are exactly the same size, pretty much. However, the Legacy mass produced, you can see it's quite a bit smaller as far as height and width, and it makes it so much easier to shuffle, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I prefer the larger cards. To me, it's not a tarot deck if it's not got size to it. I mean, my God, some of the, in the old days, you'd see people do it, and the cards were like this, and they'd be laying them out, and I think the Legacy size is really perfect for someone that has smaller hands or wants to do a lot of rifling. Nowadays, a lot of us do the hand over hand one, and it really doesn't matter as much. And if it's really wide like this, where I have short fingers, I can hardly hold the thing to do it that way. You can turn the deck up and down and do it, shuffle it that way. So it's kind of a quandary for me. I want the bigger size cards, but if you're using it every day, whew,
Yeah, it's
fun.
hard on the hands. But one of my favorite of his decks is was the gilded tarot when it first came out. But he also has the gilded royale version, which
Right.
is like the newer one, and it's really become one of my new favorites. And I have the mini version. So this is the mini version, the mass-produced mini version of the gilded royale, and you could tell how much smaller the mini version is compared
Well, that's so
to.
funny. I was going to bring that up because I saw on his website how he had miniature versions of the deck, and I still think that's really cute though, and imagine, you could just
They're great.
you could just throw that in your purse or throw it in your pocket or whatever,
Yeah.
and pull out this deck and it's like, zzz, oh, there you go.
Yeah, I love them. And I kind of like, I'm not like the kind of collector that, is going to some auction and bidding on some ancient deck or something, or
Sure.
or buying, reproductions that cost a couple $100. Like that's not, for me. Like I can't justify it, right? But there are, like Los Scarabeo did a Anima Antiqua series. It's still ongoing of reproductions of historical decks. And what you find with that is that, these decks were small. There's a lot of decks that were so much smaller. I'm trying to think, here.
And I've got a question for you too.
Yeah, look, this is like the size of like one of those decks that I bought. They were skinny and they were smaller.
Good size though.
Yeah. And so you compare that to like, today, and you can see it's like a big difference. So it's like what I kind of feel like what's happening now with the size of cards and everything is really kind of, maybe it is like sort of just a sign of the modern age, because we've got like so much variety. You can get cards like in all different kinds of sizes, from those gigantic, what seems like gigantic oracle cards to mini decks like the one I just showed.
I got a question and a comment. First of all, Sharona's saying cardstock has different preferences whether you are a reader versus a collector. And I think nowadays one of the factors is that we do have so many more collectors versus readers, because back when we started, there was a handful of decks. And by the way, that dovetails nicely into my question, which I was going to ask you. Wasn't the Marseille the deck that you actually started with? You yourself?
No.
Oh, okay. What was it? Because I remember you saying it was different. You didn't start with the Waitsmith. You started with something else. I could have sworn you told me that.
No.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of
I?
someone else. Maybe I don't know.
No, wait. I'm trying to think. Like I'm trying to think of when I got my first Marseille deck. It was pretty early. Here's what happened was that I think the very first one I got was just a classic Rider-Waite Smith,
okay.
like everybody else. But shortly after that, I got a Marseille deck and I got a Thoth deck, because in my mind, I'm like, okay, there's 3 different traditions of tarot. I better know about all 3 of them. And I also wanted to know, like, what was I going to be? What was I don't even know how to talk. I wanted to figure out like what kind of reader I was going to be. Was I going to be a Marseille reader? Was I going to be a Thoth reader? Was I going to be Rider-Waite Smith? And I found that I was continually drawn to Rider-Waite-Smith, and at the same time, I I had an appreciation for the other traditions too. So I kind of never really let go of all of them. And then I really got, you know, I think the first historical deck I got was like a miniature Visconti deck. And I was just so in love with that. And so I kind of, I don't know, I like them all,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
But going back to the what Sharona had to say, which is, really spot on,
Mhm.
that when we started, there was a handful of decks. Now there's thousands upon thousands. And so you have the new crop of people coming into tarot, and a lot of folks are collectors more than readers. And
Yeah.
they're looking for the larger size, for looking at the image, and the thicker card stock, the substantial, I like to call it substantial card stock, something that's going to last in
Yeah.
the collection, because they're not going to use it every day to read with.
Right. Right. And for me, it's like, this question came up like last week. I think I was in a conversation with somebody about the idea of like, what is a collector, you know? And to me, I consider people collectors that, yeah, it's like an investment, just like if you would be an art collector. Now, at the same time, I have a couple hundred decks, let's say conservatively, but it's not because I'm collecting them. Once they go out of print, um, then I put them aside. And I have decks I've never, used, um, that I just want to have in my collection, so to speak. But I'm not collecting them for some, value to them, like some dollar value. What I collect decks
Sure.
for, and this really ties into why I really like the Tarot Decoratif so much, is I'm always looking for decks that are going to expand my tarot vocabulary, that are going to really give me a different take on any particular card, to give me something else to think about, like what, take any card like the High Priestess, somebody who has a fresh take on the High Priestess. I'm probably going to want to look at that deck and see, like, does that idea of fresh ideas continue throughout the deck? And chances are, if the artwork speaks to me, I'm going to buy that deck. But that's just me. Because I'm always looking for new ideas of new ways of looking at the cards. And I think, and that's how it ties into the Tarot Decoratif for me. I think what Ciro did here is fresh and new and, beautifully done.
Oh, I love the box. Oh my God.
And, I went to ask you, Dax, what did you think of Lee Bursten's take on the court cards? That idea of seeing them in the light of, pages, in the light of the Fool, and knights in the light of the Chariot, and um, the queens in light of the Empress, and kings in light of the Emperor. I thought that was a really interesting way to look at it.
Mhm.
And I don't remember, I don't know, I don't remember anybody like, you know, coming up with that before. I don't know, they could have, and I just missed it.
I don't think so either. I mean, I thought about it. I remember, decades ago thinking about, there's got to be some connection. Why do we have the kings and queens? But then when you got emperors and empresses, this was like early on where I was like, what is even going on with the tarot?
Right. Yeah.
And
Like,
the lineups just make sense to me, I suppose. I like what he had to say, and some of it's actually a lot of stuff, like we discussed earlier, is very different. And
yeah.
I'm gonna have to try to use it and try to go through the book a few times but I do like his takes on it. It's kind of a modern, fresh look at a way of looking at the cards.
Yeah.
And, oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was today was the first time that I actually noticed that the 8 and the 11 is swapped.
Right. That's Marseille.
That must be a Marseille thing. Yeah, where
Right.
strength is 8 in Wade Smith, and
Yeah.
11 here.
Yeah, it's that whole thing of, that eternal question, right? That people answer in all different kinds of ways of why Arthur Edward Waite switched the strength and the justice card. And,
Right.
My gosh, I've heard like a lot of arguments for the reason why.
I
And
love that
then,
one.
people will give this big, huge explanation, and then somebody will come along and say like, well, that really doesn't make sense. I kind of feel like that question alone has like led to 1,000 discussions, on tarot boards and now on social media. And I feel like it always will. It always will. But yeah, traditionally in the Marseille decks, yeah, it's that's what he switched around. Trying to think here, let me just grab this. So yeah, justice and strength card here, so yeah, that's the traditional justice at 8 and strength at 11. And it's, you could also argue that it doesn't matter, there's always that argument, like it really doesn't
Oh my God,
matter.
it's so funny that you said that. I had myself on mute because the wind suddenly picked up here on the patio. But to me, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. But the numerologist in me is like, well, I can see the connections. It makes so much more sense to me that strength would be 8 and justice would be 11. 11 is the master illuminator number, and there's that implied balance with the 2 1s, which is what you get with the scales and what's going on in the justice card. And 8 being abundance in numerology, and all true abundance comes from first having the inner strength to go after that abundance. You see, the people.
Yeah, and there's the Kabbalah argument too, in the Golden Dawn version of Kabbalah argument. And I kind of feel like I feel like anybody can make a fit. I've heard the astrology argument for it as well, for the reason they're switched. And I just feel like it's really okay, because like we're finding all these ways to relate to it. And, if it makes sense to you, what else matters, kind of, I think.
Right. Yeah. We constantly tell all our students that's what really matters is, you're creating another language in your subconscious when you're studying and developing your knowledge of tarot. So if you're like me and you've been maybe a little timid about the Marseille deck, you got to go out and get Tarot Decoratif, because if you're a Waite Smith reader, if you've always used that deck or those kind of decks, and you've been a little hesitant, you've thought about it, but you weren't quite sure, Tarot Decoratif is the nice bridge between the two.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's true. I think there's a lot of Rider Waite Smith readers that will never look at a Marseille deck. We'll never pick it up. I mean, and the reason I think that is because I say that, because they'll say things like, well, I don't want any decks that don't have fully illustrated pips, and it makes me a little sad. And I feel like, you know, yeah, calling it a bridge and maybe getting people to like kind of even learn something about the Marseille, because the book is really great, you know, and I think that, you know, he's opening the door, for people that otherwise wouldn't even go there.
Awesome.
Yeah.